Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep, really deep, into one of the most influential empires in history, the Persian Empire. And we're not just talking about battles and conquests, though there are plenty of those.
Right. But what's fascinating about the Persians, especially under their founder Cyrus the Great, is how they ruled, how they brought all these different people and cultures together. That's what we're going to explore.
It's a huge empire we're talking about, spanning what, like 3 continents?
Yeah.
And for centuries.
Yeah, from around 550 to 330 BCE. Think about that. Over 200 years, this empire, at its peak, stretched from the edges of Greece all the way to the Indus River Valley in modern-day
A
India.
truly massive swath of land. So you can imagine the kind of logistical, cultural, and political challenges they must have faced, right?
Exactly. And that's precisely what makes Cyrus the Great so intriguing. This wasn't just a ruthless conqueror. He seems to have been incredibly forward-thinking for his time, especially in how he treated the people he conquered.
Which is what we're going to try to understand in this deep dive. Like, how did his vision, his methods, shape not only the Persian Empire, but influence civilizations that came after? What's the legacy here?
I think a good starting point is, well, the beginning. The rise of the Persian Empire under Cyrus. And it all kicks off with this revolt against the Median Empire.
Ah, the Medes, right. Another
Right.
powerful empire in the region.
Exactly. So around the mid-6th century BCE, Cyrus, who is a Persian king, he leads this rebellion against Median rule. And, well, he wins. And this victory, it's not just a local power shift. It marks the emergence of a whole new force in the ancient world, the Persians.
And that victory, that's just the opening act, because then come the conquests. Lydia, right.
Lydia, a kingdom famous for its wealth. They had all those gold deposits, remember King Croesus, incredibly rich. And this conquest, it not only expands the Persian Empire, but also fills its coffers, giving Cyrus even more resources to fuel his ambitions.
It's like they're on a roll now. And next on the list, the biggest prize of all, Babylon.
Babylon, a legendary city, the heart of a powerful empire. Its capture in 539 BCE was a monumental event. I mean, think about the cultural and political impact. It firmly establishes the Persian Empire as the dominant force in the region. They were now the major players.
Okay, so military success, check. They're expanding, they're wealthy, they're powerful. But here's where things get interesting. What happens after the conquest? Because it's Cyrus's approach to the conquered people that really makes him stand out, especially for that era.
It's really remarkable. Instead of the usual brutality, the forced assimilation we see with other empires, Cyrus implements this policy of tolerance. He shows respect for local customs, religions, even their forms of government to some extent.
Right, which is a total 180 from how conquerors typically behaved. You'd expect him to impose Persian culture, their religion, on everyone, wouldn't you?
You absolutely would. That was the norm. But Cyrus, he saw things differently. And one of the most striking examples, probably one you're familiar with, is the liberation of the Jews from Babylonian captivity.
Oh yeah, that's huge. I mean, this event is recorded in the Hebrew Bible, and Cyrus is even hailed as the anointed of the Lord. Talk about making an impression.
It's a really powerful testament to the impact of his actions. And it wasn't just a symbolic gesture either. By allowing the Jews to return to Jerusalem, rebuild their temple, Cyrus wins their loyalty and, let's be honest, probably earns some good PR along the way.
It's almost like a brilliant PR campaign, but on a historical scale. He's not just conquering, he's cultivating goodwill.
And it's smart, strategically speaking. By allowing conquered peoples to maintain their own cultural and religious identities, Cyrus fostered a sense of, well, acceptance. It fostered stability in his empire, which is crucial, especially when you're ruling over such a vast and diverse territory.
This is like an early form of multiculturalism.
You could definitely say that. And it seems to have been key to the Persian Empire's longevity. By allowing people to practice their own customs and religions, Cyrus avoided a lot of the unrest and rebellions that plagued other empires.
So you've got this foundation of tolerance and smart governance laid down by Cyrus. And then comes Darius the Great.
Darius, oh, he's a whole other level of impressive. He takes the reins a little later, reigns from 522 to 486 BCE, and he focuses on consolidating this vast empire, making it run smoothly. And I gotta say, he was an organizational genius.
Yeah, I've heard about his administrative reforms. They're legendary. We're talking about road construction, postal systems, a standardized language. What were some of the highlights?
Well, the roads, for instance, the most famous one, the Royal Road, stretched over 1,600 miles. Can you imagine?
1,600 miles.
Yeah,
That's like an ancient superhighway.
exactly. And think about what that meant for communication, for trade, for moving troops quickly. It was revolutionary. It basically shrunk the empire, making it easier to manage, easier to control.
And then there's the postal system, right?
Yeah, a network of mounted couriers who could relay messages across the empire with incredible speed. And this level of communication, it's not just about convenience, it's about power. It allowed Darius to stay informed, to respond quickly to any problems, to maintain control.
Right, and also probably help to connect those diverse cultures within the empire.
Absolutely. And to really facilitate communication, Darius made Aramaic the official language of the administration. It was a practical solution. You've got all these different people speaking different languages, but now they have a common tongue for official business.
Makes sense. Streamlines things. It's almost like the ancient world's version of having like a lingua franca for trade and diplomacy.
Exactly. So you've got Cyrus, who sets this amazing tone of tolerance, and then you have Darius, who builds these incredible systems to make it all work on a massive scale.
Two really key figures. Now, we can't talk about the Persian Empire without mentioning Xerxes, right?
Mhm.
He's probably the most famous, thanks to Hollywood and the whole Greco-Persian Wars thing.
True, most people know Xerxes from those epic battles against the Greeks. He faces the challenge of maintaining the empire his predecessors built, and yeah, he has to deal with those external pressures from the Greeks.
But for understanding the inner workings of the empire, the foundations, we've got to focus on Cyrus and Darius, right?
Exactly. Their contributions, their vision, those are the real game changers.
Okay, so let's step back and consider this whole concept of cultural integration, right?
Mm.
How did the Persian Empire, with all its diversity, manage to function without constant internal conflict?
That's the million-dollar question. And it all goes back to what we talked about earlier. It all goes back to Cyrus, his policy of respecting local customs and religions, even allowing some degree of self-governance in certain regions. It's like a delicate balancing act. But it worked.
Because people felt respected. They felt like they were part of something bigger, but they could still hold on to their own identities.
Precisely. It wasn't about erasing those differences. It was about creating a system where they could coexist and maybe even benefit from each other. And all those infrastructure improvements, the roads, the communication that helped knit the empire together, it facilitated trade and exchange.
So this story, it's way more nuanced than just battles and conquests. It's about sophisticated governance and a surprisingly modern approach to diversity. That's what blows my mind.
It really is remarkable. And that legacy, those ideas about tolerance and cultural integration, they've echoed through history. You see them in later empires, and even, you could argue, in modern societies today.
We're still grappling with these same questions about how to manage diverse populations, how to create a cohesive society where everyone feels respected.
And that's why studying the Persian Empire is so relevant. It offers valuable lessons. And I think it raises an important question for all of us. As we look at our own world, our own challenges, what can we learn, not just from the Persian Empire's successes, but also from its eventual decline?
Right. What went wrong? What can we avoid? Fascinating stuff to think about.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, let's recap the key takeaways. We started with Cyrus the Great, a leader who, instead of crushing those he conquered, opted for this revolutionary approach of tolerance and respect. It wasn't just ethical, it was smart. It created a foundation for a stable and lasting empire.
Exactly. And then Darius the Great builds upon that foundation with these impressive administrative systems. Right. The roads, the postal service, a common language, all these things allowed this massive multicultural entity to actually function effectively.
A true innovator. It's an incredible story, one that shows us that real power, lasting power, often comes not from brute force, but from creating systems that allow for cooperation and mutual benefit, even amongst diverse groups.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
So as we end our journey through the Persian Empire, I want to leave you with this thought. How can we, in our increasingly interconnected world, apply those same principles of tolerance and smart governance to build a more peaceful and prosperous future? It's something worth pondering, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did, and we encourage you to keep exploring history, keep asking questions, keep learning.
Until next time.